In the summer of 1994, world-renowned Hollywood production company Paramount Pictures brought shooting of their legendary Academy Award-winning film Braveheart to here, the Carr, County Kildare. The Battle of Stirling, arguably the most iconic scene in the film, was shot right here for nearly 6 weeks straight with over 100,000 extras, most of which coming from the FCA. You don't need to travel far to hear the words of experience from over 2 decades past. Living just a few kilometres away, former military police sergeant Michael Smith tells of his experience.
As a member of the Defence Forces station in the Corps, I was a sergeant in the military police, and there was 3 military police assigned to go down to look after the crew of the FCA that were taking part in the film. At one stage there were up to 700 of them there. Once the film was taking place, you had to be in the background, you just couldn't be driving an up-to-date car. As a policeman in the camp here, we were involved in the policing of the camp. Richard, our son, was involved in the security aspect of it. So he was based on where the wardrobes and our armories or whatever it was involved. And then he went to Wicklow, and other parts were shot up there. So it's very interesting that I seen Gibson already, but I wasn't talking to him.
Unlike Michael, who is only a mere drive away, our main subject has travelled across the globe and has been in the presence of some of film's most legendary directors and actors.
Well, I was born in Kildare town and I grew up in Rathangan. One of 11 children. Went to Rathangan mixed school, convent school. Eventually at 8 years of age we went up to the master school, as called in. It was a national school at a primary education. And I finished school at 14 officially, but I finished at 13 and a half. At about 18 and a half years of age, like many an Irishman of that era, and Irish woman, I emigrated to England. And after I worked on the buildings, worked as a tubular scaffolder. And one night I went to a local dance hall and I met what was to be my future wife. We got married in 1962 and we had 4 children, all born in East Dulwich Hospital in southeast London. And still on the buildings, and after about a year or so I was on one day over a tea break. There was an advert on an evening news looking for tubular riggers in Shepperton Film Studios. That was my first introduction into the film industry, and I just climbed the ladder, and fortunately I was fairly successful.
July 25th, 1968, 50 years ago, Stanley Kubrick unleashed upon the world his sci-fi magnum opus, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Although mostly overlooked at initial release, the film has gone on to become universally acclaimed and is often regarded as the greatest science fiction film ever made.
I was an ordinary rigger in that, and it was the main set and only big set was a big wheel. And that would have been about 30 foot diameter. And there'd be space pots, and there'd be a lot of the lighting in those days, arc lighting and all that. My main job would have been making rostrums for holding big arc lights, and you could be 20-30 foot up in the studio, and making tracking for the supposing the camera wanted to track 20-30 foot, we'd have to put a rostrum, and if it was up 20 foot, you'd have to build a rostrum to take that safety wise. My best memories would have been, I didn't have to wait subsequently for Stanley Kubrick to become an icon. I could see he was a very, even in those days, meticulous, knew what he wanted. Yeah. And he was very particular, and he might go 20, 30, 40 shots before he'd be satisfied.
James once again found himself in the presence of Stanley Kubrick for his 1980 horror masterpiece, The Shining.
Well, I started on The Shining in 1977, and little did I know that all those years before that I worked for the same man. But we would have been working nearly a year constructing all the different sets and all that. We built, filmed on a natural maze, the maze scenes out in someplace in England where it's a proper maze, but we replicated not all of it, but a good portion of it, where eventually Jack Nicholson is frozen to death where he dies in the maze. And I've got a photograph of myself standing at the foot of that maze with artificial snow. And all the snow you see on the foreground is all artificial snow. And sometimes when in a scene from the film where Jack is going berserk with a hatchet, with an axe behind, she escapes through a window, and I have got to put up a ladder when the camera stops rolling and that to get her out, and then you see her down at the bottom of the slope. My worst memory would have been in that film was stage 3 was burnt down overnight through filming, but fortunately they had enough takes taken, and that it was for whatever reason, whether it was electrical or whatever, and that it was completely gutted, the stage. So we had to improvise with other sets. Don't forget all of EMI Studios, stage 3, stage 4, 5, 6 and 1 and 2, they would have been all taken over by The Shining for all the interior sets.
The Shining was James's final film to work on. With such great films to go into production in future years, why did he choose then and there to retire?
Made a decision mutually with my wife. My wife wasn't well. It was nothing to do with Alzheimer's at the beginning, but she had other problems, and in the interest of our life, and she always wanted to come back to Ireland. But I was happy. I've no regrets for making decisions in life. You make decisions, and that pertains to that point in time. They'll be domestically or whatever, and I done it in the interest of my late wife.